Good evening and welcome back to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. Tonight, our special guest is Maurice Todd, author of the Snotty Nose Kids series. Thank you very much for being with us this evening, Maurice.
Thank you very much for having me.
Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is sponsored by Eyeless Diamonds LLC, brought to you by Milton McCulloch, author of Love and Emancipation, and L.D. Robinson, owner and operator of Ladero Press. Our newest sponsor is a Dante Production. Thank you very much, Dante Productions, for being part of Fresh and the Fresh Book Festival 2022, 6, 7, 8 January. If you have any questions for Maurice, please put them in the chat box. We will get to them at the end of our conversation. And this is being recorded, I must tell you that, for many, many reasons. So this is being recorded. Good evening, Maurice. So take a few minutes to just give us a little snippet about yourself.
Well, CEO of SK Rocks, my own publishing company. And so far we put out books that are addressing the needs of children that are going through several issues, such as childhood bullying, the depression which accompanies it. We also deal with trying to address the need for our children to learn about financial literacy so that they can empower themselves as they get older in order to be able to be competitive in this world today. We also address the need to be able to stop what is now known as a school to prison pipeline, where the children are for whatever the reason, ended up in prison due to certain issues, whether it directly connected with bullying or the fear of going to school because of the fact that there might be other children waiting for them in school. They're having hard times with the children. Some of them are having hard times with the actual teachers themselves. So it's a lot. And the books that I put out, they're nursery rhyme based because I realize that the children of today, their language is rap. So we try to address those issues in their language and make it kind of sort of like we finesse them, so to speak. You know, we give it to them the same way that society, unfortunately enough, is giving it to them in a negative way through rap and other platforms such as that. So that's basically what I do as far as my company is concerned. I'm from New York City, Queens specifically, and I grew up in the South Jamaica section of Queens, and I grew up seeing a lot of things while growing up that impacted my life, or I should say I allowed for it to negatively impact my life. And ultimately, I wound up in prison. I did 16 and a half years in prison for armed bank robbery. So I think I know a little bit about the things which negatively impact children, because I myself was negatively impacted. So that's my journey. My journey is, if I can possibly make a difference by way of teaching children, whether it be by way of my books or physically being there to mentor them, well, then that's what I do.
So that leads me to my first question. So the Snotty Nose Kids series was written to assist young people. So tell me how you manage to write in their voice. Do you have young people around you all the time?
Mm-mm.
And you talk about death and divorce and illness. How is it that you got their voice? Because what I heard on that podcast tells me that you really are in their heads somehow. How did that happen?
Well, I have a background in music. I used to be signed to RCA. I used to, on a subsidiary of Mary J. Blige and Skip Woodley. So there are a lot of things that I picked up while I was in there, in the music industry. And I came to realize that you could actually, for the lack of a better word, influence people through music. You could influence people by way of your speech, your cadence, how you delivered it, things of that nature. And so when I was incarcerated and I was on my way home, that's when the idea to write the Snotty Nosed Kids came into effect. So I actually wrote the Snotty Nosed Kids while I was incarcerated. But unlike all the other novels that I had written, which was based upon negative aspects, which I had picked up while I was in the streets, I said to myself, I didn't want to come home and unleash that upon the world, because the world already had enough negativity and negative influences. So what I did was I decided to go on a journey and write a book that would take in consideration all the things that I knew about what was going on in the world, because I saw so many young people coming into prison, and their stories were all the same. So I said, let me take all the skills that I had, being able to rap, being able to write, being able to connect, being able to relate, and I put all of that into this book. So unlike other children's books, this is pretty much dealing with the issues that we know children deal with, right? It begins kind of, in the hood, but eventually they make their way to a fairy tale land. But the reality is that for most of our children, they're not living in a fairy tale land.
So I don't want to dwell on this, but tell us just a little bit about your other novels. I didn't really realize that you had novels previous to this. So tell us about that journey and that aspect of your life.
Well,
Were they written while you were in prison, or when
yeah,
you?
they were all written while I was in prison. And I came to realize that God gave me a gift. And that gift is I'm able to convey, messages, whether it be verbally or through music or through, writing. But I had to come to an understanding that the things that I was writing about before, even though they were gathering an audience from amongst the people who were in prison, I had to sit down and reflect, and I had to say, well, is this the path that I want to take? Do I want to take a path that is going to further incite people negatively, or do I want to take the path that is going to inspire people positively? Because the reason, one of the main motivators behind me doing what I did was, movies such as Heat and Scarface. These things without a doubt are
New Jack City.
New Jack City, these things without a doubt, there may be people who say, well, that shouldn't impact people. Yeah, well, it, it does, because it puts people underneath a spell. So I said I wasn't going to be, a person who put people under a spell that led them to do the same things that I did, which wound me up in prison. And fortunate enough for me, I survived it. A lot of people that I know never survived that journey. Yeah. So all of these things it created within me a moment of reflection and say, okay, I have a power, right? Mm-hmm. I have a power, and I'm going to use that power in order to be able to positively impact children. So, I said to myself, even after doing
this was after you were released from the system? You decided to write, or did you write inside and bring it out?
No, all the writing that I did was in prison. Everything.
The children's books?
The children's books was done in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So you have four major characters, right? 3 or 4?
Well, there are 3 principal characters that I begin the story, and the grandmother. Right. So that makes for 4, because she's for those who are aware of like the Gullah people and the Geechee people, they're people that most people are unaware of, even from amongst our own, that these people, the Gullah and Geechee people, they're like phenomenal when it comes to like being able to tell stories. And a lot of them live, you know, down off the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, and they have
Charleston.
Charleston, South. Exactly. They have enclaves, and they've been pretty much left alone to be able to do them, so to speak. So a lot of if you want to look at like a lot of African traditions, you ain't got to go no further than them, because they've managed to retain those African traditions because of their reclusiveness. And so when I was told about this story by an individual who came from there, that sparked the interest in me to tell a story of a grandmother who had that ability to tell stories and to like pretty much like take children, you know, by way of their imagination to places where they could actually leave the, you know, the hopelessness and the despair of their surroundings, but also to teach them things that they could also utilize while in this world. So that was the influence behind creating her. And then the other little children, you know, I didn't sit down originally and say I was going to write these characters. I didn't do that.
Oh, right.
I used my background in rapping, and I just started flowing. So as I started flowing and speaking, the characters came to life. Of course, I had to go back occasionally and revise, but for the most part, I just created these characters off the top of my head because I knew that within me there was a Benji or a child who, growing up, was extremely intelligent, and I believe that within all of our children there lies, you know, similar character, a child who has, you know, extreme potential and can do wondrous things if they were only cultivated. So that's Benji, you see. And so that's the brainiac. That's the child that, you know, pretty much is a loner, plays video games, you know, and stuff like that. So that was the influence behind creating him. Carly, who was the oldest, that came to mind because, you know, growing up, I had an older sister. So, you know, she was the oldest sister over top of all her brothers and siblings and stuff like that. So in my mind, she became, Carly was the reflection of her, so to speak, the young lady who, you know, oversees her brothers, looks out for them, stuff of that nature. And then there was Owen, who is kind of like another personality trait of mine, you know, the guy who's outspoken, wears his hat backwards, for the lack of a better word. He's kind of like, you know, ostentatious. He's kind of rebellious. He's outspoken, but none of them are bad kids. You see, these are just characteristic traits of children, and that was what propelled me to write about those characters. But there are other characters in there too. That represent other ethnicities. You know, there's white kids who come visit them. I'm not come to visit them, come to live with them because they too are orphaned. You know, and then I speak about, you know, the little Mexican boy who's extremely talented. He draws. You know, there's a little Filipino girl in there. You know, so I try to include all the different ethnic groups up in there so that everyone is represented.
So is that kind of like what Queens was? I mean, I don't know anything about that part of New York, but did you grow up where there was different ethnicities in your neighborhood?
No,
No.
but no, but
No.
Queens, no, but Queens there is a Chinatown. There is, you know, places where Spanish people live, and you know, so I was aware of them. So alluding to what I believe what you're bringing to the point is that everything that you bring or you manifest out in the world, you had to have had some type of experience with it. So yeah,
Touch on it. Right.
Right, to a certain degree. Yeah, no doubt.
So why Snotty Nose? I mean, because I thought it was great because all of us had snotty noses. I remember, if you go to the store, you might say, "Girl, get that nose," you right? Or
Right,
she would take her hand, and oh, mothers are just so
right.
good, right? And so, why
Mhm.
snotty nose kids? Why was that the? I think it's perfect, but I'm just asking how did that come about?
Well, as writing all the other books, I was always like, from a marketing standpoint, what would, you know, attract people to a book,
Hmm.
regardless of whether or not you're in the legal world or illegal world, you know, you pick up the understanding of how business moves. So even when I was out there doing illegal things, I always knew that, what's going to, in a competitive market, what is going to bring people towards me in order to cop what I have. So you have to always be able to move, you have to always be able to move towards, innovation. You have to always be like, a genius when it comes to marketing, strategizing, and things of that nature. And it's no different, that approach was no different when it came time for me to start coming up with titles for my books. So when it came to this particular book, it just popped in my mind. Like, my mom used to always, yell at us and call it, and say, "You snotty nose, get over there, snotty nose kid," or you, or so these things. When it was time for me to give it a title, I got on the phone with my mother, who's no longer here. She passed away. But one of the last conversations that I had with her, I was like, "Ma, I have an idea for a book." And she was in her 80s and she had dementia at that time. And I said, "You know what the name of it is?" And when I told her, she giggled. So I was like, "That's it. That's the
That's
name.
it. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
it." Yeah.
It's a perfect. I mean, it's a perfect name. I just didn't know how you decided that that was the one you were going to use, and I just remember growing up, and everybody had a snotty nose. It's not like today. You see somebody with a snotty nose, everybody runs. It was just like everybody had
Right.
one.
Yeah, unfortunately, right?
It was just nothing to it. So when
That's
I
right.
watched the podcast, which was a very good podcast, by the way,
Thank you.
I had no idea those many influential rappers came out of Queens, right? And is one of my favorites also. He is and came from you gave homage to him about coming out of Queens, and Rakim and other prolific rappers. How did that change your life, being around all that musical magic? I mean, there was a ton of them that God gave me, right? Who do you remember who they all were? There was a lot.
I mean, music influences us as a people, because music helps us to overcome our plight.
Yeah, but I was born in Pittsburgh, and I tell you that not about those amount of rappers came out of Pittsburgh, right? You're in
Yeah.
Queens, and I think he named like 10. So it had to be a real
Yeah.
influence on your life.
I mean, there are people who always wanted to be rappers. Drug dealers always wanted to be rappers. Rappers always want to be drug dealers. You see, so yeah, that's how it goes.
That's
It's
how it
crazy.
goes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it goes because you're identifying with you know a sort of like instant gratification that you get from seeing the type of reception that these individuals get. Like when you used to see certain dudes from around my neighborhood, I'm not going to mention their names, but
Right.
when you used to see them, and I mean, you're not a dummy. You see how the women react. Like
Like
when these dudes drive.
superstars, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they would. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
was they. Yeah, of course,
yeah. Right.
they were superstars at that time because I'm an older guy. I'm not a young dude. The young people are basically pinging off of something that they really don't have a reference to. And what I mean by that is that when we were coming up, we didn't have the type of celebrities to look at and say, this is who I want to be like. Nowadays, there's like a plethora of of people that these young people could, you know, they could be LeBron James, they could be Kyrie Irving, they could be whoever. When I was coming up, and the generation before me, basketball players weren't making money like that. There were drug dealers that were making far more money than basketball players. As a matter of fact, there were drug dealers who had an opportunity to go to the NBA and they turned it down. They was like, you know, I could play. I'm a star from around my way, right? And every hood had that type of thing. So when music came along, and you had Russell Simmons coming from out of Queens, and the founder of Def Jam, and you know, now that changed things. You know, so now people started turning away, not as much looking towards the drug dealers, and even the drug dealers themselves was looking at the rappers. You know what I mean? Because now the rappers got tour buses, they going on tour, they on television. So yeah, your question leads to the fact that within all of us, we all want to be looked upon, you know, in a nice light, in a positive light, you know, and we all want to have our 10 seconds of stardom and fame, and every single human being, you know, whether it be man, woman, or child, we all want that, we crave that, you know. So and the ping off of that goes back to the kids. Like, you know, these kids need attention, you know, they need love, they need to be looked upon with some type of self-worth. So that's what that goes back in regards to the music. Like, everyone said, well, listen, you know, we're living in these environments out here where, you know, it seems like, you know, we don't have what we see on TV from our white counterparts. We don't have that.
We don't.
You know what I mean? So, but if I see this guy right here and he coming through the streets and he got on a house medallion, he driving a BMW, within, this person gives me the hope that maybe one day I might be able to experience that in whatever shape, form, or fashion that might be. We don't think about the long-term effects of achieving that. You know, all we know as humans is that, you know, this is instant gratification. This is my drug. This is what makes me feel good. You know, so for some people, they just feel good being around that element. To be next to a star, that's a high for them.
Mm.
So that's what music did. Music changed people. They was like, yo, we could be LL. You know what I mean? We could be Run DMC. We could be
Little Kim came from there. Little Kim came from there?
Little Kim is from Brooklyn.
Okay.
And
Excuse me.
And Brooklyn people don't want to hear that. Yeah, don't try to claim everything for. Nah, we ain't gonna do that. But Rakim wasn't from Queens. Rakim was from Wyandanch, Long Island.
Okay.
He was from Long Island. Yeah.
But he was one of the rappers that you paid homage to on the podcast.
I paid homage to him because when I was asked about the rappers at that particular time, being the type of person that I am, you know, being in the music
industry,
and being able to recognize talent, right? Rakim was head and shoulders to me above the others because he also came from an area, right? He also came from an area that was, you know, rough and tumble and all that, but he allowed for his mind to elevate, you see, and that's why I gave him the props, to be able to allow your mind to elevate and also inspire other people to talk about, you know, about the universe and take trips around the universe. Nobody was talking like that.
Mm.
You know, it's easy for a person to talk about things that you can see and is relative to your existence. So if you know, it's easy for a person to talk about guns and you know, drugs, and because this is things that we all see, right? We all see this. If you're coming from the hood, we see this. So now what makes you better than the next person? Because you can articulate it in a better way. Okay, then that's cool. But a person who can talk about something that you can't see and then bring it into existence and have you think about it too, that's a genius to me.
And so when we talk about elevating, this is what your book series does for the children, right? It elevates them to not only read, but takes them to different lands. Tell us about the difference in the three books.
Well, it's a journey pretty much. The first book, The Snotty Nosed Kids, it starts off kind of like, you know, it's in your face, like, because it's telling you, yeah, it's in your face,
Okay.
because and it's meant to do that. It's meant to do that. It's meant to let you know that it starts off by saying this story begins like no other. So for it to be like no other, it has to be like no other. I can't come and talk about Dick and Jane and Sally went over. Nah, because that's no knock against anybody who comes from that perspective.
For that
Because a lot of
era.
or from that era,
Yeah.
or they feel that it's safe to talk to children in that manner, right? But I also realize that in order for me to get towards the children, I have to include the understanding that this ain't the time like that. This ain't back in the Beaver Cleaver days. This ain't the 1950s. It's not these children have access to things that would make me and you blush, right?
Right.
So in order to keep their attention, you have to let them know that you know, right? So you gotta talk to them, and I'm not trying to introduce them to anything other than what they already see, right? So there are people right now that are passing away from COVID. There are people right now who just the other day, like 2 incidents out here where a drunk driver came and killed the lady with a child, and so these are realities. It's not something that is meant to shatter the psyche of a child, but to let the child know that it's time to open up, right? Because a lot of these kids are walking around, and whether the parents realize it or not, because I know I realize it because I'm very observant. When I'm talking to these children, I can identify a lot of things in the child, because I know I see in them what was in me, a traumatized individual. You see, so I'm sitting up there and I'm looking and I'm scrutinizing, I'm saying, okay, well then there's got to be something going on here, right? So if the parent want to pretend like it ain't going on, that's on them, right? But the reality is these kids are walking around, they're seeing way too much, they're being exposed to way too much, right? And way too much, and it's creating within them, right, a traumatic situation. And they're being asked to walk around without disclosing it.
And so that's book one. Tell us about book two.
Book two goes from the introduction of the characters, getting past that, and the grandmother talking to them, and kind of like comforting them and explaining to them, certain aspects. But she's also telling them that there's other kids in the world like you that have gone through what you're going through, you see, who have been orphaned, right? Because there's a lot of kids out here that have been orphaned. In our community, we don't call them orphans, right? We just call them foster care kids. So it's the same thing. Like depending upon your terminology, whatever it is that you want to say, it's all coming down to the same thing. These kids are in foster care, and they're bouncing around and around and around, and we think that as long as they got a roof over top of their head and something to eat, that they're going to be good. Nah, they're not going to be good, because they're being traumatized throughout the entire process of people just passing them around, right? And in the process of them being passed around, they're being exposed to things, right? A lot of things, right, that a child should not be in. And this is what the grandmother's saying, that, these children, they're Caucasian, and I spoke to the social worker, and the social worker said that they're about to be broken up because there's families that'll take the little boy, but not the little girls, and vice versa. So the grandmother says, I'm going to bring them in to live with y'all. but she gives it to them in a manner to where she allows them to become part of the process. So she says, well, what are your thoughts on things? And so they ask questions. And so the book is basically opening up a narrative that allows children to talk instead of us shoveling stuff on children, because the children are the ones that are going through what they're going through. You have to give them the opportunity to open up and express themselves, but without crossing boundaries, because you're still the parent and they still the child.
So book three.
And then book 3 is that the grandmother, she starts to get into more of who she is, you know, as a storyteller, and she starts to explain to them, you know, of a place that she once visited as a child, right? And she goes on and she starts to talk about this fairy tale. Well, to some of the kids, they believe that it's a fairy tale land, but for the Walker children, the Snotty Nose kids, they know that grandma's teaching a lesson. So they listening to her talk about, you know, this Isle of Sepulveda, and she starts to explain about, you know, the king. He's half lion, half tiger. You know what I mean? He's a liger. So he's by
liger.
Yeah, he's a liger. And so if anybody can talk about exclusivity and being, you know, different than everybody else, is this king. You know what I mean? And his advisor is a martial artist called Fu Manchu. You see? So I created that character growing up, always going to 42nd Street, and watching the Chinese movies and things of that nature. So his you know, right-hand man, he's real wise. You know, he's a martial artist, and his name is Fu Manchu. You see? So yeah, so you have all these people, all these characters, they're animals, but they speak, they have their own existence. And this is what the grandmother is telling, that she learned a lot being there. And towards the end of the 3rd book, you know, that's when, you know, the unraveling of the tale begins. And then going into the 4th book, she just drops it all on them and just starts hitting them from left and right with, you know, and so the story it starts to
morph.
to go, yeah, exactly, morph from being just in any hood USA to now you're being taken to this imaginary place, and certain things are being explained to the children, how the mountains are made out of chocolate, and you know, and there's you know, there's fountains where you know, nobody really knows what, if it's, you know, you could argue whether it's, you know, soda pop, or whether it's some type of juice, or, you know, what. So I try to make it fun all throughout, make you laugh, you know what I mean? Because that's if you can make someone laugh, you got them. So that's the whole thing with that. But towards the end of the 4th book, you know, when she comes to the end of telling, you know, her tale up until that point, you know, gets quiet, and then the little Caucasian boy in there, he's like, wow, you know, he's like, you know, that was phenomenal. Like, where do you get all these tales from? You know what I mean? And she kind of like, you know, like she took that as like, this ain't a tale. What you talking about? So from there, that's when it's going to get to wherever they're going to actually, you know, visit this island.
So you envision 10, 15 books?
It could be whatever you want it to be. I mean,
it could be whatever you want it to be.
Well, it's not about what I want it to be, because if don't nobody want to hear what I got to say, you know, I'm gonna go do something, go do construction or something. But nah, it could be, you know, whatever the demand is. You know, that's what they teach in business. You know, the imagination is already there. There's certain things that I've already written down. Do I have more manuscript? Of course.
Right,
but,
that's what I meant.
You know, yeah, it takes funding to bring all of that.
That's true.
Into existence. But what my mind already has, which I haven't written down, yeah, it could be more than that. Yeah.
So tell me why you thanked your illustrator.
That was just a luck of, that was just like a luck of the draw. Like he chose me.
I've just
like,
never heard anybody thank their illustrator for their book. So I was really surprised
right.
when you did a YouTube for him. So yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about that is that, I try to give people who help me their just dues, and because that's the law of reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Thank you.
Right. That's all
That's
right.
the law of reciprocity.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's how I move in life.
So tell me how you guys met.
Well, in this day and age, he's from India. So
Okay.
I'm he just came and got in contact with me. I went to a room of people who were offering up their services, and nobody really, really like, and you made me say, this is the person here. Or there was one individual, but he was charging way too much. So I was like, nah, you got talent, but maybe if I had a Brinks truck to pull up, we could we could talk, we could work. Yeah, but I ain't got no Brinks truck, bro. You know what I mean? So that's why I say it was through the luck of the draw that he even got in on the project.
So how many renditions of the logo did you do with him?
I had to go through quite a bit with him because he's not black.
Okay. Right.
He
didn't understand.
He's talented, but he's not. No one can
black.
understand. No one can understand us except for us.
Right.
So you have to you have to educate them. You have to educate them as to, and that discussion is a discussion that has to be held outside of writing children's books, because no one understands us except for us. No one understands our plight. No one understands what makes us tick. You know what I mean? So you have to, by way of discussion, you have to explain that to them. And then after that, I think maybe after no more than 2 times with him, that, he pretty much got it after I explained it to him.
So share with us, and for our first-time authors, things you would not do again and things you think you did really well in publishing.
Yeah, that's heavy right there.
Yeah. I mean, because we don't want them to fall in the same rabbit holes,
You're absolutely right.
Tired of being down there with the Ace of Spades, right? Looking up at him saying, am I down here again? Couldn't anybody help me from falling into the rabbit hole?
My brother told me that, and I didn't understand it until I had got through this journey, that this is the reason why people make you pay for consultation. Because consultation helps you to avoid making the deadly mistakes. We all going to make mistakes along the way, right? But the key is to avoid the ones that put you on your back. The ones that put you on your butt, you can get back up, right? But the ones that put you on your back, those are kind of like the death blows. And for people who are just trying to learn the game, we as a people, like we're
brand new at this thing. Everybody says, oh, everybody writes a book. Well, everybody black does not write a book. So we're really new at the whole self-publishing indie game. And so when you have somebody like yourself who has already been through the process, it's nice to learn from the hole that you fell into. So
I believe the key is, number one, you have to have a firm conviction in what it is that you're trying to do. Because without that, you're not going to make it. you almost have to feel like you have a calling from God, right? That's number one. That's what I had, right? I felt like it was my calling from God for me to not stop, because there were many days and nights where I felt like just giving up, right? And that's going to be that's going to be that negativity in your head that tells you, because you've never been down this path before,
Right.
right?
It looks
That
deadly.
that it's not for you.
Yeah, right.
That's not that this type of work is not for
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
right? And it's even harder for a male
Yes.
in this industry. Children, and I'm not talking about if I was writing books about, what have you. I mean, the type of books that I said I did write, it would have been an easy sojourn, because people would have said, yeah, he looked like the dude who know what he talking about. You know what I mean? But because I chose to go this route, which is female dominated, right? It made it even harder. But I came to realize something. A partner of mine said to me, you got to realize that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, the children's industry was dominated by male authors and writers.
They were.
And if you go even back further, right, in our culture, the storytellers have always been men.
Right.
So
And the Greeks, the stories were told by men.
told by men.
Women weren't even allowed on stage. So yeah.
Yeah, they weren't, except for some things that
Right. We can't
So
talk about.
yeah, exactly. So with that being said, I said, okay, this is the niche that I have to hit. And the answer to your question is, you have to do a lot of reading. You have to do a lot of reading. You got Google at your fingertips. You got like never before. You got the ability to download so much information, and then from there, you have to do your homework, because like anything else in any industry, and particularly on social media, you got a lot of people trying to scam you, take your money, tell you things that really, even though there might be some truth to it, they're trying to drag you out. They're trying to drag you out so that they can get as much money from you as possible.
Right.
So you have to learn your craft, and you have to learn it well, right? And then once you realize that, then you'll know that these are the things that I have to get. I got to get my own ISBN numbers, so I don't get tricked by Amazon and all these other cats
Right.
who wanna give me an ISBN number so that they can steal
your work,
my work, right? So once you know that, then you're like, okay, cool, right? And then once you do your homework, and then you say, okay, what is the industry norm for a person who does illustrations? And one of the dudes that I was incarcerated with, he said, when you go home, Mo, understand something, that you don't have to settle for talent here in America, that there are a lot of foreign people who came here, who studied here, and they left because they didn't have the ability or the resources or the income to stay here. They went back to their countries, but because this internet opened up the world, that you can access them, and they'll be more than willing to do the equivalent of what someone here would do, but at a fraction of the cost. So that I kept that in my mind. So when I came across this gentleman, I was like, okay, he's going to do phenomenal work, and he's going to do it pretty much at a discount rate compared to someone else here who would charge me maybe perhaps double for the same type of work. So that's another option, right? And then you have to understand the formatting game. So you do all of that. You do the majority of all the cleanup yourself, so you can save time when it's time for people to start editing things. But the main thing that I tell people is, in order to help you, right, you have to, before you start creating your book, get it edited, send it to like a Kirkus review.
Absolutely.
Because what that'll do is that'll stamp your book as being credible. Because the one thing about this industry, just like all industries, they're trying to keep people out of it so that they can keep the majority of the money. And in order for them to do that, they're going to do whatever is within their grasp.
They put stipulations on everything, you know. Yeah.
And to discredit you.
Yeah.
And to discredit you.
Yeah.
Because the moment that they say, oh, this doesn't have a review, that's their way of discrediting you. The moment that they say he's an indie author, that's like a bad word. That's like a derogatory statement in this industry, right? So one of the individuals that I met, I give him a shout out, you know, Richard Ashby, you know, from out of Literacy Nation. He helped a lot of people, you know what I mean, of color, getting their books up in the libraries, right? Which was a huge, a monumental thing, because what it does subliminally, it tells you that you belong, right? And so another thing that you want to do is you want to start the marketing before the book is ever even finished. You want to start sending out flyers. You want to start telling people about your book. You want to start having lives and Kickstarters. You can, the very thing that I'm doing right now, I wish that I had it done prior to me releasing the books, because then that would have generated far more interest in what I was doing. It's like you're building the hype. It's no different than when you're in the music industry. Before they ever put out the album, they big the artists up like 2-3 months ahead of time, because now you create the buzz and now you create, but the whole thing is you just got to make sure that that date that you say that you coming with that product, make sure that you come with it. So those are just some of the things,
right.
but you have to be prepared.
Yeah. And so I'm going to ask you about the game of Monopoly, which I thought was very interesting, and why you think all of our children should learn how to play. I remember playing as a child, but I'm not sure people play it anymore. Why did you feel that was important?
Because Monopoly, whoever created Monopoly based it off of life itself. You know, I speak to people all the time, and I'm sitting up there saying, like, if you were to take the discussion back to who founded this country, you want to have people say Christopher Columbus founded it, right? Or whatever. No. That's the wrong answer, right? Christopher, no, I'm sorry. He didn't discover. Right. He didn't discover. You can't discover something that's already been discovered.
Here.
Secondly, the reason why I bring that up is that when the settlers started coming here, right? And we're not even talking about the Africans, because the Africans was already here.
Right.
Right. We're talking about when they started coming here from other areas of the globe, and specifically from England. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Yes.
When they came here from England,
they're called the colonizers.
But they gave them that title because they really wanted to cover up who these colonizers really were. There was two companies that came here. Listen to what I'm saying.
Okay.
They weren't colonizers, they were companies, right? One was the Virginia Trading Company and the other was the Plymouth Trading Company.
That's correct.
And they both came here because they had every intention of creating a corporation.
Yeah.
Which they did.
They started at the ports.
And the first thing that they did was they started building, after they got past whoever was in their way, right? They started building railways and like you said, the port, because that's important.
Yes.
The port of entry allows for you to land your navy there.
Right.
See, so now whatever I tell you something, or this is called the wimpy extortion game for those people who are from the streets. Like, I don't have to really talk to you that hard. You know what I mean? I don't have to really talk to you that hard. I can actually come to you in a very low, diplomatic, soft tone and express to you my needs and desires, but you're not going to be listening to me because you're going to be looking past me at those 20 dudes sitting on the car behind me. That's called the wimpy extortion game. Right, exactly. And what that means, I can be very diplomatic and talk to you nice because subliminally you're not listening to anything I got to say. You're looking at those 20 wolves behind me. So that's what they created the port of entry.
Yes.
And put the wolves there.
Yes.
So as they moved in, they started taking land, just like on the board of Monopoly, right? Whether it be taken by force, whether it be entering into treaties and reneging on it, whether it be stealing, whatever it was, they grabbed land, right? And so in the words of Professor Claude Anderson, 97% of all the land is taken here in America. There's only 3% land left. So you're gonna have to get in where you fit in.
Right.
But what they did was they created a system, right? A vertical ascension, right? So when you have a system of vertical ascension, you understand that at the bottom of that ascension, 5 tiers, because this is what they built. This is not me saying that. This is what
right.
they built.
Right.
They built tiers to whereas at the very foundation is the money. The very foundation is the money. The second tier is the politics. Because you can't have politics without money.
Right.
Right. So for the people who think that you're gonna get something by way of a vote, you're sadly mistaken. The only way you're gonna get something is by way of the money. Because the money buys the vote and it buys the politicians and it buys the power. The third tier after that is what they built was the communication system, because they knew that they needed to be able to disseminate their information over top of the masses. I don't want to continuously go on, but that's why I said about Monopoly, this is what our children have to learn. You got to get out of your head the things that they taught you, because they taught you that in school to keep you subjugated to their system.
Right. Exactly. And you talked about the utilities. Right.
Right. The rail.
Yeah, all of that. So anyway, I just thought it was very interesting, and I never really looked at Monopoly that way, but I'm looking at it a little differently now, especially when we have game night with the kids. So maybe we'll do Monopoly and history all at the same time.
Yeah, you have to teach them. You have to teach them the difference between actually owning and then leasing and renting. Because because they want us to believe that because you have a house that you're a homeowner, but you don't own the home because the bank has a lien on that house. So all you're doing is maintaining that house for the bank. That's all you're doing.
And if you live in the District of Columbia, you don't own the land anyway.
The District of Columbia is a municipality. It's a municipality for a reason. So sorry to say for my peoples from out of DC, it's never going to become a state because it was created to safeguard something.
Right. So anyway, we'll bring you back for a history lesson, because you are really knowledgeable. But I want you to just take a minute. I know we're getting close to the hour. Could you just take a minute and read something from the book really quickly?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Now, this story begins like no other in a place that we would like to call any hood. But it's so hard to tell a tale in these days and times when you must first start with kids that are good. But there are 3 which we really should speak about, all of African-American descent. Well-behaved, if you ask my opinion. But you'll have those who say that they should have been content. But this life is so more demanding. They're eating cookies and candy, picking up balls and jacks. Not when there's the sadness over the loss of your parents having just passed away, knowing they ain't coming back. Their car having been struck by another car where a drunk driver had fell asleep at the wheel, and in a split second, they had lost both loved ones, so it's really no small wonder that they should feel like the sky had fallen down upon them, or like a huge hole had been dug through their hearts. And for kids that have to deal with this stuff, it's gotta feel like their world had been torn all apart. Now, the oldest one, a girl named Carly, was truly blessed, her ebony skin all aglow. 2 long pigtails braided down her back made her beautiful from her head to her toe. And at 13, she guarded over her brothers, somewhat like a hawk. One would say that it had always been that way ever since the day the 3 of them could walk. O, which was short for Owen, fancied himself man around the house, but he spent most of his spare time picking fights, knowing full well that he couldn't whoop a mouse. He too was brown skin complexion, honestly speaking, a handsome little lad. With all that thick curly hair of his, he was the spitting image of his dad. Let's not forget Benjamin, his little brother, and also the youngest one out of the three. And with a brain size twice your average, he was a genius, which everyone could see. A sharp pup, if ever there was one. He wrote the book on witty words to say. And he might have solved half the world's problems if he weren't playing video games all day. So they weren't the worst of kids, really, though it may be said they were close-knit. They didn't steal, nor did they play hooky, spray graffiti, or throw fits. They weren't finicky eaters either. What they were served, they ate most of it. And they never complained when they didn't receive what they felt they were supposed to get. Now you're sitting there scratching your heads. I know. It's understandable for most to get that it was their Nana, Madam Estelle Walker, who called these three the snotty-nosed kids.
Hey, thank you so much. So we have some questions in the chat room. Let me put you on gallery. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Let
you.
me see. Chat. Okay, as you write your books, what is the one lesson you want children to take from your stories?
To dream and never stop dreaming.
Yeah, that's good. What financial lesson have you found that children relate to?
Being hungry.
Well, that's right to the point, right? Being hungry. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll do a lot of things to fill that belly. Mr. Maurice, purpose and passion, I love it. Have you ever visited Sepola Island in Georgia? Is that where is that where it is? This island?
Cepalo.
Yeah, Cepalo.
I use the word Cepalo, but it's not really there. But I remember watching a PBS documentary on those people down there, and it was like, it was beautiful. You know, the ambiance is like beautiful, colors. You know, wherever you travel, anywhere through like Savannah, you see these, I don't even know the name of those trees, those huge trees, and they got all the foliage hanging down. I love stuff like that. So no, I have never been there, but it's definitely a place that I definitely want to visit one day soon.
The other question is, you may have said it, but did you publish through KDP?
Yeah.
You did?
I published the ebooks through Amazon's KDP,
Okay.
which is their ebooks, and their paperbacks. But I created my own publishing company, and I have books printed through Ingram Spark as well, hardbacks. But the majority of my hardbacks I bring from overseas myself.
And your marketing, I love your shirt and your hat. What other merchandise do you have on your website?
I have, for right now, I have the hats. I have the long sleeve t-shirts. I have the short sleeve t-shirts. I'm going to be moving towards, because of the winter and stuff like that, like hoodies and jogging suits. But my thing is that I always like to, when I do something, I always like to do it like, you know, I like to blow the lid off of everything. So like even with these graphics right here, like
they're really nice.
Like, thank you. They you know, ain't nobody for a little kid. I'm a grown man, you know. So just imagine a little kid walking around, and then you got on the back. So whatever I do, probably I'll be doing stuff to wherever it's just like embroidery and things of that nature, so that the kids, they feel, you know, they feel good about what they got on. You know what I mean? You match it up and stuff like that. I got masks and things of that nature. But I got a little surprise, you know, I'm working on that perhaps might be able to take it to a whole nother level. But for right now, you got the books on there. You got the shirts, you got the hats, you know what I mean? And you know, that's the starters kit.
And so tell us, please, how to get in touch with you. You would prefer people to buy directly from you, is that correct?
Yeah, I prefer they buy directly from me, so
And how do we do that?
so that a brother can live.
Right. So brother
You
can
know?
eat.
So a brother can eat. Because I'm gonna tell you one thing about these colonizers, boy. They got the system set up to where they gonna do the eating. But
Right.
you know, on a more serious note, yeah, SNK period rocks. That's my website. SNK period rocks. And if you go to my Instagram page, which is Mafazin _CO, you'll see all the kids, you know, in videos that I made and stuff like that. Some of the kids are on motorcycles. Other kids are reading from out of the books. Other kids are taken to these zoos and amusement parks where they can, you know, they can actually get to see the animals and take them from out of the hood, you know, and show them that there's more to this world than just being in the hood, things of that nature. So, you know, that's what I'm aiming to try to accomplish, you know, to be able to do that. So
Anything
go to
else?
the website,
Yeah.
SNK period rocks, you know, and then the IG is Mafazin _COM AFAAZAN_CO.
So is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we say goodnight?
It was a privilege you having me on here and allowing me to be able to give a voice to my platform. And I appreciate that. And
we appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
And I encourage the mothers, the fathers too. It was enough talking about mothers, the fathers too. You got to get involved in the raising of your children. And like Nikki Giovanni said, it begins with you sitting down and being the first teachers and instructors to your children. And that means you have to open up those books. We ain't talking about no tablets or anything like that. You got to open up those books. There's a science to all of this. You open up those books, you get interactive with those children, and you talk to them. That's what I have as far as a plea to these mothers and these fathers. Get involved with that, because it's a bonding there, and it's a linking there, and it gives you an opportunity to really be in the lives of your children and allow for them to realize that there are things that they can actually express to you, you know.
So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. This has been a Fresh Book Conversation production. And thank you, Maurice Todd, for being with us tonight. And we will see you all again on Monday night at 8 o'clock. Thank you so much. Good night. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.